Please welcome our neighbors from Atwater Village, Swedish Nightingales.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I still almost fell off the stage. All right, we're going to start the show now, baby. Bring it up.
You are the show!
No, baby. Larry.
This is important around this time of year. Who's never been to a strong word show? Show of hands. All right. Virgins. We love virgins. We're going to need you to take turns in a rotation in the manger scene out front. All right? Our first storyteller is also a virgin. Correct? Kind of. Oh, sort of.
Depends on the area.
I think we're all sort of kind of virgins here, aren't we? Really? If you wait long enough. Let's welcome, making her debut on our stage, Dorothea Coelho.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi. Larry is the best. Please give it up for Larry. He's the king of this castle. And Roy, who's my friend, who turned me on to this, so I'm really excited.
I love your clog boots.
Oh, thank you. And because I'm a freezing cold person, I've got 5 layers on now, and like I brought 7 jackets, extra blankets if anyone needs, and I'm wearing winter hiking socks. So, Foxy not. All right, so my happy holidays, everybody. Every holiday, whatever. And my story is called The Cat That Killed Christmas. All right. I consider Christmas the 4th runner-up of all the Hallmark holidays. While Thanksgiving, July 4th, and Labor Day all stand on the podium, sad, greedy Christmas is just off stage, clutching a soiled tissue and a wilted bouquet of flowers. It would be lower in my standings, but I view Halloween and Valentine's Day as 2 24-hour prison sentences that no one should ever have to serve. Like gender reveal parties and NASCAR, Christmas brings out the worst in people, especially my people. And by my people, I mean my father, who we called Papai. He was a small, brown, tyrannical Brazilian immigrant, basically a grumpy raisinette, who entered every room with dramatic flair. and then, whether it was Tuesday night or Christ's birthday, would contribute nothing but a bad mood. Occasionally, there were sparks of Christmas cheer, like the time he decided to paint our front hallway to freshen it up for a holiday party he didn't want to host. With a used roller brush and a can of leftover white paint he found in the garage, he barely covered the dirty walls in a crisscross pattern. Then he screamed that the ceiling was too far to reach because he was tiny, and then he left it to dry for 3 years. Or the year he drove out to the country to find a perfect Douglas fir to murder. When my father finally spotted one that fit his specifications, a tiny Charlie Brown Christmas tree because it would smell less piney, he handed my mom a saw to single-handedly cut it down while repairing to the passenger seat to massage his lower back and curse the snow! To say he wasn't awful at Christmas is like saying porcupines make great pets. For weeks leading up to the big day, my mother would do all the lifting, heavy and otherwise. She baked and she crafted and she shopped for everyone's gifts, while my father locked himself in his study and wrote poems in Portuguese about winter's death grip and his disdain for Catholicism. With very little money and 2 delusional daughters, me being one of them, whose lists included for Santa Kool-Aid-filled swimming pools and a team of solid gold show ponies, my mother would always somehow manage to make a great top-rated Christmas morning happen. After hours of us sitting on the itchy living room rug with our stockings spilled all over in every direction, my father would shuffle out of the bedroom wearing corduroy and a smirk. With Coke bottle glasses and a shock of thick hair that smelled like Prel. Do you remember Prel?
Yeah.
It was green. Electric green.
Yeah.
Toxic, I'm sure. There was a small window of pleasantness. But by the time he unwrapped his second pair of bikini briefs, and for those of you who don't know what they are, they're called Brazilian banana hammocks. The only thing he would wear, and he'd run around the house flexing his muscles, going, "Look at my muscles!" And I'm still in therapy. The holiday spark had already gone out of his eyes, and he was back to humbug. Even a mustache the size of a squirrel covered his upper lip, and it still couldn't hide his contempt for Kris Kringle's favorite day. After graduating from college, I refused to go home for the holidays, thus making Popeye's torturous version of the first Noel not part of my life anymore. My husband Dave, a super Jew, and who doesn't love a super Jew? I mean, ladies. He loves all things Santa. He helped me create new moments and memories of Christmas, like with ugly Christmas sweaters and 100-proof eggnog. I had never had eggnog until I met the Jew who loved Christmas. His mother is super Jewish, hates Christmas trees, and has still not forgiven me. While I miss my mother so much at these moments, it hurt my teeth. The thought of spending one more unholly, unjolly day with a man whose idea of fun was despair, it kept me away. 4 years ago, my father's health began to deteriorate. He hadn't eaten anything, not even an ice cube, for almost a decade, with all his meals being fed to him through a tube and pureed and into a tube into his stomach. But being somewhat of a manorexic, which is true, he was the size of like a little black bean, and he was very manorexic. His favorite foods always seemed to be slushy and beige. That was his go-to, like pudding, vanilla, and gruel. But he looked at the tube as kind of a win because he didn't like eating. Due to his you're supposed to think that's kind of funny. It's called irony, people. Listen, you've got lemonade, and you've got lemons, you make lemonade, you've got a really shitty cloud, and it's covered with gold. Anger. Oh, sorry, that's my cloud. It's totally anger. So due to his condition, Dave, my husband, insisted we fly home for Christmas. And remember, I'm allergic to Christmas at this point. And our child, our kiddo at the time, needed to spend more time with his grandfather, no matter how melancholic he could be. And it was very melancholic. 3 days before our flight, my father called, and in the best Carmen Miranda said, "Dorothea, you can't stay at the house. We adopted a cat, a very, very fragile, delicate cat, and I know you'll let her out." I was floored. First of all, Boston, you cannot find a hotel, and when they are, they're $900 and they're shit. So just think of it that way. I was so angry, but I was not surprised. "You're choosing a cat," I said to him. "A cat, like a used cat, a cat you hardly know, like some street cat, a fucking cat over me and my family." As I ranted and raved, he sat silent on the other end, waiting for me to finish. When I finally paused for a breath and a nose blow, he replied, "I'll pay for the hotel." And he promptly hung up. 48 hours later, I was in his foyer, giving him an Olympic embrace. You know, the fake kind with the shoulder tapping, the kind that small-fisted gymnasts give to each other when they're hoping that their teammate breaks a leg. You know? I call that the Carrie Strug. Oh, and it worked, didn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Oh, good job. Really? I don't know. After some stilted chit-chat, and then followed by my father's standard Irish goodbye, he kind of disappeared up to the top of the house. When the cat, that's Freudian slip that he's fat, she fat. When the cat finally appeared, I was stunned. There she was, a gray and white fatty named Dora. She was humongous, the size of a rusty dumpster, with a rotund body that trembled every time my mother gave her like little chicken niblets. My father, a classic serial fat shamer and chunk hater, had chosen an obese puss with the personality of a bowl of rice instead of me. And because of that ball of offal, we were barely speaking. Over the next 336 hours, I did everything I could to lure Dora out of the house and into the jaws of the hungry coyote, including strategically tossing kibble out any open window I could find, while telling her that life would be so much more rewarding outside with smaller, less feral animals than my father. We woke up Christmas morning in a 2-star hotel that reeked of carpet fresh and dirty feet, and drove through snowdrifts to get to my parents' house, where, dressed as Nordic explorers, we sat around a tiny plastic tree like a frozen nativity, waiting for frozen Jesus to finally arrive. When Papai finally came downstairs to open his presents, he looked tired. His pale skin matched his white hair, and his plaid scarf seemed to be propping up his head. He smiled meekly without showing his teeth, and then sat down in the old, ripped vinyl recliner he'd bought in 1973. Our son Otto walked over to him, placed his head on his shoulders and his arms around his neck. My father responded in kind. His eyes were closed, and just then I recognized a happiness and a peace I hadn't seen since I was little. That same expression would wash over his face whenever he ate a perfect mango, or he kicked a soccer ball, or he told me that dirty limerick he learned from that naughty cousin. There once was a man from Kent whose penis... You get it. Those little moments that brought back his Brazil to him seemed few and far between. Or maybe they weren't. Maybe through his dark curtain of homesickness and longing, and a very possible mental illness shared by 3 crazy uncles, including one who always ran naked through the town square when it rained. That's my family tree, and it's crooked. I couldn't recognize these moments of joy that he expressed. Maybe that cat felt like home to him. And maybe my delicious little Otto, all love and arms, smelled like his mother's hugs or his father's sweet, musty library. Maybe that was the little bit of Brazil he had left to share. For many years, I hadn't really noticed his good, only his bad and his ugly. He was so much more than what I chose to see, but I needed better glasses. Surrounded by presents he didn't want and a body that was betraying him, he made a valiant effort to enjoy his nude banana hammocks until the lights dimmed again, and he vanished upstairs. My father died the following fall. He offered no deathbed apologies or resolutions, but the last thing I said to him was that I loved him and I was sorry. I knew he could hear me, and he knew I meant it. I cried for 4 days straight while I cleaned out his bedroom. Dave, my husband, nicknamed the Hoarder Suite. Pillows, pajamas, dictionaries, myriad of tissue boxes were stacked up to the ceilings, keeping the walls keeping the enemy out, or the family members as well, but not the cat. On the 5th day, after finding a treasure trove of his Speedo bathing suits hiding under a stack of Borges Top 10, I turned to my mom and said, "I can't wait for Christmas." "Me too," she said. "Me too." Thank you very much.
So let's welcome Elisa Barrett.
Yeah.
Hello.
Oh, you look
Hello.
great.
Thank you.
Nice colors.
Thank you. Okay. This story is called Hanukkah Magic. Okay, so Hanukkah isn't even my favorite Jewish holiday. I mean, what's Hanukkah got going for it anyway? Candle lighting? Sorry, we do that like every Friday night for Shabbat.
Yes.
Good food? Okay, latkes are delicious, but I'm sorry, Hanukkah's got nothing on Passover. Passover's like fragrant matzo ball soup and slow broiled brisket and a tangy carrot simmus and sweet haroset. Yeah. I mean, does Hanukkah even have the best story? Again, Passover wins it hands down. I mean, Passover's got everything. Palace intrigue, plagues, liberation, even a high-speed chase through the Red Sea. Plus, you try going up against Christmas every year. Honestly, even when your parents say, oh, but honey, you get 8 nights of presents instead of just 1, they aren't fooling anyone. Every Jewish kid in America knows that Hanukkah guilt cannot compare with gingerbread houses and snowflake-shaped sugar cookies and the magic of unwrapping all of those gifts piled up under the Christmas tree. And yet, Hanukkah has been around for more than 2,000 years and counting. So, what's the story? Well, it's got all the usual good stuff. Hostile invaders, plucky underdogs, triumph against all the odds. All right, so here's the story. The underdogs are a group of Jewish rebels called the Maccabees. Driven into the wilderness, they fight back, push back the Syrian invaders, and take back the Holy Temple in Jerusalem.
Yay, Maccabees.
Yay, Maccabees. But what's this? The temple is a wreck. Even the consecrated oil used to illuminate the sanctuary has been trashed. There's only enough oil for 1 night. And in despair, the Maccabees call out to God, and voila, the oil lasts for 8 nights. In other words, people tried to go DEFCON 3 on the Jews. We survived. It was a miracle. Let's eat.
Yes.
Now, I shouldn't joke about anti-Semitism. After all, there is an entire section in the Talmud that debates when it is safe to leave the Hanukkah menorah in a window facing the street, and when the Hanukkah menorah should be hidden from view. Think about that. Keeping quiet about being Jewish is not new for me. Now, I was born in New York City and I live in Los Angeles, the 2 American cities with the highest Jewish population in the country. But I spent most of my childhood in Texas. Oh, yes. Okay, so imagine being rudely transplanted from New York City to Houston, Texas, and only to find out that your new synagogue was built to look like a church in the 1920s so it wouldn't get torched by the Klan. True story. Imagine your new carpool buddies telling you Jews are the devil's spawn, which they know because their Orthodox neighbors wear those funny little hats and shirts to hide our horns and tails. True story. Imagine the new private school you're so proud to attend only dropped their quota on Jews and other minorities the year you were admitted, 1982. And imagine that your new classmate at that school being totally shocked when you invite her to your bat mitzvah because, like, you don't really look Jewish. So you may be surprised to hear that my happy place at that school was the choir, Cantori. Yes, it had a highly Christian canon that covered everything from Agnus Dei to How Great Thou Art. Cantori was the pride of our school and the go-to musical group on campus. Need a hymn during weekly church services? Call Cantori. Want to entertain parents and influential donors? Call Cantori. Planning the annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony? Yes, exactly. Our choir teacher was Mrs. Scarcella, and she was one of my favorite people. She was full of warmth and energy and passion, and when she conducted us, her whole body would move, and she would tell us, now smile when you sing and make a joyful noise, and we always did. In her own way, Mrs. Scarcella was also a rebel, like the Maccabees. She was quietly staging her own revolution by transforming the Cantori into a mini United Nations. Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and people of all races were suddenly let into this choir, all white, all Christian, formerly choir, and began to explore music from around the world and from all traditions. I felt supremely safe in that choir room, safe and seen, free to be myself and all of my adolescent awkwardness and glory, free to be a little Jewish girl in a Christian-dominated world. So I was super honored when Mrs. S, that's what we called her, tapped me to be part of a special quartet that would sing at her church Christmas gathering in Katy, Texas. And I was so excited that I didn't really think too much about what that was going to entail. So picture it. We meet up at school, dressed in our holiday vest, bundle into Mrs. S's station wagon, and we headed out of town, heater on full blast. The four of us soon drifted off to sleep, and an hour later, way outside the city limits, I woke up and saw on either side of the freeway, for as far as the eye could see, every single house sparkling with Christmas lights. Oh my God. We took the exit and I started to freak out. I knew about the Passion Plays and the pogroms. I had studied the Holocaust at Hebrew school. Oh my God, I reached for my inhaler. Okay now, everybody out of the car, Mrs. Garcella said. It's time to sing. So I took a deep breath, opened the car door, and put one foot in front of the other. When we entered the church vestibule, Mrs. S was swarmed by all of these people who were so happy to see her. The hall was lined with tables filled with every food imaginable, and soon we were all hugging each other and laughing, and in a way it kind of reminded me of Friday night services at my synagogue. You know, same laughing, same hugging, same love, just without the ham. Maybe that is why, on that night, in that place, Mrs. Scarcella did not have to remind me to smile when I sang, because my heart was already filled with joy. Some say the true miracle of Hanukkah is that the simple act of lighting a candle and saying a prayer can transmute any space, any time, anywhere into Jewish space, into safety and community and everything we all yearn for in times of trouble and strife. Maybe I was making my own Hanukkah magic that night. Imagine me transforming all of the Christmas lights into candles and all of the carols into an ancient Hebrew blessing uttered by the Maccabees all those years ago. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Happy holidays.
A storyteller and a cantor. No extra charge. All right. More virgins. Making a bold, strong words debut. Also baked some amazing cookies. So you're going to want to offer up some thanks for that. Yes. Please welcome Scotty, Jeanette, Madden.
That's right!
All right.
Oh fuck, I'm not doing this. First of all, I'm never gonna follow Elisa again. Like really, seriously, with the singing? Oh my god. Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. You may have met me before, because at the Autry Museum, I was the one who was the loudmouth that said, yeah, I want to do this. And then Larry said, okay, come on out. So here I am. Okay. My story is called Last Christmas. The last Christmas that my love and I shared was magical, despite a septic tank backup the 2 days before Christmas, a skunking of our beloved dog Bella the very same night, the annual formal sit-down dinner for 12 ballooning suddenly to 18 people on Christmas Eve. Another septic tank explosion, this time flooding the master bathroom on Christmas, forcing me to wash the dishes, in fact, Marcy's fine heirloom china in the driveway using the neighbor's garden hose the next day. But yeah, despite all of this, last Christmas was the best Christmas. We were the undisputed queens of Christmas. You don't have to take my word for it. You can just ask any of the fans that came to our table every year. Our house was filled with treats and decorations and cheer starting the day after Thanksgiving, every day for 30 years. We were our best and our favorite selves. But my love, Marcy, had been fighting ovarian cancer for the last 9 years of our 32-year marriage. So we had no idea that the best Christmas was going to be our last Christmas. She left us on October 6th. And with friends and family stretching from coast to coast, it was going to be December 9th when we could have the celebration of her life, right before Christmas. I had no idea where to hide. I couldn't bring myself to think about the model train set that would whistle around the 13 to 15 foot high Christmas tree that no matter how we were doing that year financially had to be in our living room. Or the ornaments that we had lovingly collected over 3 decades, from the seashells that we used at the very first Christmas we spent together when we couldn't afford Christmas, to the Victorian angel that sat alight the tree. Fuck no. No Christmas. The mere thought of trying to celebrate it without her sucked the air out of my lungs. One of my best friends came up to me and said, "What are you gonna do, for Christmas?" The truth was, I was afraid that Christmas was going to drown me in a torrent of despair and anger and rage. So I lied. I said, "I have no idea." And she said, "What about Vienna?" Yeah, what about the moon? I'll just close my arms and fly there. She goes, "No, my daughter Jenny went there to visit my cousin Veronica in Vienna. They love hosting Americans, and you qualify." I'm like, Vienna, the moon. Christmas knows where I live, so all right, I booked a ticket. And until then, I could hide in the details of the celebration of her life. There would be many people who lost Marcy like me, and I wanted to make sure that they could say goodbye properly. I would grieve when it was over, and then I had to catch a plane. The taxi dropped me off at the end of an unplowed street in the foothills above Vienna, and I dragged my suitcase the remainder of the half mile to Veronica's flat. My host, Veronica, was amazing. We were similar enough to make it pleasant, but we hadn't been friends long enough for her to know the gregarious and take no prisoners version of me, so I could be free to be quiet, which I really did need. While Veronica worked every day, I was on my own, wandering like a wraith through the Christmas markets drinking glue wine until she got off work. Then we would meet for more glue wine and a little light dinner before saying goodnight so that she could get to work the next morning. I would get to bed around 10 p.m. and sleep as if in a coma in the front salon in a pull-out couch next to the winter garden, which was a glassed-in porch. I would wake refreshed, surprised that I had slept so well, only to realize that it was barely 11:30 p.m. Holy circadian rhythms, Batman. I was 12 hours upside down. So I would grab the down comforter from the bed, and I would snuggle into an oversized chair in the winter garden I would stare out the window through the pines, whistling in the winter wind and looking down on the lights of Vienna, and cry for 7 hours straight. Until the smell of Vienna coffee and toasting pastries would alert me that Veronica was up, so I would dry my tears, share breakfast with her, she would go to work, I would head out for more glue wine, wash, rinse, repeat. Christmas didn't seem to recognize me here. It spoke in a dialect I didn't really understand. It was like watching Christmas in a snow globe. So my plans seemed to be working. That is until Christmas Eve. For some reason, when I woke up that morning, I could feel the ghosts of past, present, and future all lurking. Veronica had invited me to spend the day with her brother Wolfgang at his house with his wife Katharine and their young son Matthias. I braced for impact. The house was warm and lovely, but just like Veronica's house, there were no signs of Christmas decorations anywhere. Whew. I might be safe here. 7-year-old Matthias loved his Auntie Veronica, and it was her job to entertain him. There were guitar lessons. I didn't know Veronica could play the guitar, but then again, I just met her. And they played every board game in the house. There were many, while I just sat and drank wine and made small talk with Wolfgang and Katharine. After a fabulous lunch, it was time, which apparently everyone knew but me. I was quickly read in why Matthias had such a monkey mind all day long. It seems that in Austria and Switzerland and Germany and the other countries around the region, children write letters to the Christkind, just like we do here for Santa, asking for the most desired gift. And I was suddenly made aware of a room that hadn't been on the tour when I first got here. The salon. I heard a faint bell ringing. Katharine asked her son Matthias, "Matthias, did you hear that?" Matthias answered by practically vibrating out of his body in tortured anticipation, "Christkind! Christkind! Christkind!" And he blew through the door of the salon into splinters. Inside was a Christmas tree that had been delivered by Christkind mere moments before, with wheel-lit candles on every branch and sparklers. Silver bells were all over it, and there was a freaking river of presents that were decked out in all kinds of rainbow colors. And luckily, Papa. Wolfgang had been able to somehow get between Matthias and the tree. Matthias pulled up hard when he saw his father holding a guitar. "Matthias, first we sing." So Matthias snatched the guitar out of his hand and played the speed metal version of O Tannenbaum and Silent Night. We didn't even make it to How Lovely Were the Branches before Matthias started handing out all the presents and making us all open them in kind. As I didn't even get a chance to say thank you before we were moving on to the next person. It was like trying to have Christmas in a hurricane. The beautifully decorated salon, which mere seconds ago had been Austrian tidy, was now a sea of shiny paper and discarded bows. And just like that, it was over. Matthias hugged everyone, then vanished to go play with the Lego train that the Christkind had bestowed upon him. My head was spinning. It was the fastest Christmas on record. Elapsed time, 4 minutes and 15 seconds. The sparklers hadn't even been spent on the end of the branches. Matthias's infectious joy traveled at the speed of light, a comet that sucked us all into its wake. The adults staggered to the kitchen like victims of a car crash to pick up the leftovers and have one last glass of wine. And as soon as our blood pressure came back down to normal, we hugged everyone goodnight and made our way back home. As I lay wrapped in the down comforter in the winter garden that night, I knew that despite all of my efforts, I hadn't succeeded in deflecting the bullet that I had feared so much. Christmas had found me. And it came at me with the force of a 7-year-old child cranked up on hope and sugar. I wasn't sure if I had truly lost that unadulterated joy that I once had, or if I was just punishing Christmas for taking my love from me. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to have our kind of Christmas again. But what I did know is it doesn't really matter if you believe in Christmas. Christmas believes in you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Wow.